schoolboy, come back to me. Everybody, schoolboy, schoolboy, come back to me. Schoolboy, schoolboy, come back to me. Oh, schoolboy, come back to me.
Mr. GHOne News, everybody, and of course he's joined us all the way from South Africa. We're talking about his music addiction, how he felt during the apartheid in South Africa, and how his music changed the course of South Africa and the rest of the continent right after this.
Up next on Nanaba.
There's a very interesting president, the new president of Tanzania now, who took away all the limousines of the ministers and said they can only fly economic class. His name is Magufuli. I'm sure that most of the African presidents think of him as Magufulish.
Show. Mr. GHOne News, welcome to Ghana.
Thank you very much.
You've been to Ghana so many times, haven't you?
Well, I've actually lived here. I lived here in the 70s because I played with a group called GHOne Sounds. I was brought here by Fela on a West African tour of his.
Fela Kuti?
Yeah, because I had been in the States for 12 years. And I wrote to him to say, I'm tired of explaining music. I'm sure if I can play with African musicians, I wouldn't have to write down and explain the beats and where is one. And so I couldn't go down to South Africa. I couldn't go back home or to Southern Africa because there were wars all over there. So I said, you just come over here and hang out with me for a month and, you know, play with the band. And then I'm doing a West African tour. And everywhere we go, there'll be an opening band. Maybe you'll like one of them. And the first town we hit was Accra, and the band that opened for was GHOne Sounds. And he sat next to me when they were playing, and they played like traditional African music. With just, with who's that?
You.
I thought it was my father. So I stayed. It was September of 1973. And I stayed with that band and played with them at Napoleon in Osu for 2 months, and we rehearsed all day. And then we went to Lagos and we recorded an album called...
But Accra has changed so much now.
Oh yeah, first of all, it's huge. You know, I mean, when I first came here, East Legon was wilderness.
Now it's a posh area.
I mean, now you go past for miles and it's just like homes. And when you fly in, it's amazing.
Where were you during the 79 coup? You were not here.
No, I just left. I left shortly before that.
Were you disappointed to hear of another military coup?
No, because I mean, I have no control over those things. So to involve well, considering that you couldn't go to Southern Africa because they were going through their own challenges as well. Listen, ever since I was born in 1939, I was born 6 months before World War II. And since then, the politics has just been crazy and there's been wars all over the world. There was no time up to today when there was no war somewhere. So, you know, for me, the borders, the different borders that we live in Africa are artificial, you know, because most people don't know that they started in 1886. So, to a very great extent, even African politics, I don't understand much anymore because I thought by now maybe we would have united a little more. But we have little territories that were given by European colonialists, and we fight over them. We have to have visas to go and see each other. And it's a very strange world for me, and it's always been strange. And I always feel sorry for the people, because the people so sincerely vote for people and they figure, yeah, the promises are going to be kept. But for the 77 years I've been in the world,
there's the same promises and none of them have been fulfilled.
They never get there,
Okay. You think Africa has a problem with leadership?
In Africa, I don't know what's happening. I think that to a great extent, many leaders don't understand their job description. You know, I think they think that inauguration is a coronation. And so most countries become personal properties of the president. And it's a mess.
Isn't it strange that throughout, you talk about the best presidents we've had on this continent, and you can just name a few on one hand. For instance, Nelson Mandela from your country.
Yeah.
What an enviable man this man was. One-term president. I mean, I've never heard anybody, any African president or anybody in office saying, I am going to do just one term. Nelson Mandela did it for the rest of us to see. Yet, even after his death, there are some still greedy men and women on the continent still clinging on to power. So much.
Yeah, well, I don't think other politicians pay attention. In fact, when people like Mandela come on, I mean, there's a great, Rwanda, I think, is a great president, although the Western world doesn't like him, you know, Paul Kagame.
Well, he's trying to stay in power still.
Yeah, but I mean, he has done, if you go to Rwanda, it's the cleanest country in the world almost. Yeah. And it's actually like controlled by women. You know, the majority of the parliament is women. All they have there is coffee and gorillas. But they live better than many countries that have major wealth, you know. I mean, compared to Rwanda, Ghana has major wealth, South Africa has major wealth, but it doesn't spread, you know. There's a very interesting president, the new president of Tanzania now, who took away all the limousines of the ministers and said they can only fly economic class. His name is Magufuli. I'm sure that most of the African presidents think of him as Magufulish. Because they don't like people like that who come in. I don't think they like people who come and disturb the status quo. Because for me, most presidents seem to be there to keep the status quo, so that the countries that exploit Africa can keep on exploiting us.
Instructive. Anyway, let's talk about Nelson Mandela. Great man. Very great man, isn't he? Very, very great man.
You think so?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think he's the greatest man.
He should have been a film star.
Why?
Well, because I mean, you know, he always looked like he was acting to me.
Did you ever meet him?
I knew him extremely well, because when Mandela came out of prison, my younger sister comes after me, was his chief of staff from the time he came out of prison until he became president.
Really? And
she didn't drive, so I had to take her to him many, many times. And we knew him from when we were children, because Winnie Mandela studied social work, field work in social work under my mother for 2 years, and she sort of adopted her. So we knew he was courting her then. He was trying to get next to her. So
he was chasing her.
Yeah, yeah, and she was running slowly though. But I've known from that time, and then when we came back, like I say, my sister became his chief of staff. So I spent many times with him, and we disagreed on many points. But I think I was one of the few people that, he was a very funny person. So he liked to tell me his stories and jokes. And sometimes we call him Tata. Tata means father. And sometimes I'd say, Tata, you know, I wish you'd get to the punchline because it's taking too long. And he said, just wait a minute, you're going to be laughing very soon.
You do his accent beautifully.
Yeah, well, it's an accent that's common from the Eastern Cape, where he came from.
But he inspired you in some way. One of your songs was inspired by a letter he wrote to you.
Well, in 1945, I was 6 years old. In 1984 was my 45th birthday. And he wrote to me, encouraging me and congratulating me on the work that we are doing there. And I was just blown away that here's a man who is in jail you know, encouraging me outside, a free person, you know, and I just went to the piano and I started singing, "Bring back Nelson Mandela." And my wife came running from the backyard and said, "I don't know that song. When did you write it?" I said, "I didn't write it. Mandela just sent it."
Bring back Nelson Mandela, bring him back home to Soweto. We want to see him walking down the streets of South Africa. Tomorrow, bring back Nelson Mandela, bring him back home to Soweto. I want to see him walking hand in hand with Winnie Mandela.
I didn't know that it would become a popular song. You know, I just wrote it. I didn't write it. I just like taught it to the band and we recorded it and it went very far. I think when he came out of jail, it was a theme song that they played everywhere.
Yeah. Very, very, very good. But let's go to your childhood.
Yeah.
Because this book says a lot about you. Still Grazing, the musical journey of Hugh Masekela. And you wrote it together with Michael Cheers. Who's Michael Cheers?
Dr. Michael Cheers, I met in the 1970s in Chicago. He was working for Ebony magazine.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, in the book, you talk about music speaking to you as a child and how you almost died of some sickness, but music and the church and the people in the church revived you.
Well, I wouldn't say that they revived me, but they came around to sing all the time because my grandmother who raised me was a very serious Lutheran church woman.
Grandma GHOne.
Yeah. And she was a devout Christian. She didn't even allow a gramophone, you know, music playing instrument in her house. She said these are instruments of the devil. And her sister, son, and my uncle Putu was the one who had a gramophone, you know, and I hung with them there. But anyway, she was a Christian and a serious one, and whenever one of there was sickness in the family, the Lutheran prayer women would come to sing. So I think I got well to a great extent because they sang the same songs every time they came, and they sounded so sad and heartbreaking. I was like, maybe I should get out of here because...
You were just tired. But did you think you could ever strike gold with music?
Not really, because I was I think I was bewitched with music. They jujued me. I don't... Because from the time I was a baby, I was, you know, I was always singing. You know, by the time I was 2, 3, 4, I couldn't stop singing.
Right.
And I sang with every record, with everything I heard, you know, the traditional music around. And finally, when I went to live with my parents, I was singing so much that my mother decided to find a piano teacher. So I started piano when I was almost 6 years, when I was 5 years old. And I was just crazy about music. So when I was 14, I saw a movie about a trumpet player. And I asked my chaplain at school, Father Addleston, after that if I could have a trumpet, and they got me a trumpet and a trumpet teacher. And because I was a musician already, I just had to learn the mechanics, and like a month later I was playing songs, and other kids in the school went to ask him for a trombone, and before long we had a band together. But I was in music. Who's that?
You, of course.
Oh, that's my sister Barbara was telling you about.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just was so crazy about music that I kept, like, you know, being asked to come in. Older musicians took me in, and before I knew it, I was overseas. And Miriam Makeba and Harry Belafonte helped me to come to America. And I went to school, but my aim was really to go to music school, learn, and come back and teach.
Interesting. Now, would it have mattered if your parents hadn't given you their blessing to be a musician?
Well, I ran away from home to be a musician, and I wasn't going to go back. I left them a note. I waited till they were asleep, and around 10 o'clock, which was late in those days, I wrote a note to say sorry, and that I can't be what you want me to be.
And how old were you?
I was 16.
Your letter, that letter you talk about is on page 84 of your book.
Really?
Yeah, dear Mama and Papa, I'm very sorry to be a disappointment to you, but I cannot be what you had hoped I would amount to. I have lost total interest in school. I cannot hear what the teachers are saying. All I hear is music in my ears. Nothing else seems to matter. What I am doing is not meant to hurt you. I love both of you very much, too much to want to wrong you, but I have made up my mind to be a musician. I know that I am good at it and that I will achieve great things in the world of music. If you cannot be on my side, I don't blame you, but I'm going to follow what I think is right for me. I'm leaving home. Do not worry about me. I will be all right. All my love to you, your son, Minky.
Oh, gee.
If your child left you this note,
my child wouldn't leave me a note like that.
Why?
Because I asked my children when they are 9, when they become 9 years, like, what are you going to do? I remember my 2 sons, they said, oh, but we're still too young.
At 9?
Yeah,
of course.
And I said, I don't care, but like, it's the only time I can help you is now. Because when you turn 21, I'm out of here. I'm not helping you. You're not going to be like hanging on to me.
Up next on Nanaba.
There's even like research that says that many babies in South Africa are born drunk because the mother is drunk throughout the pregnancy.
How you use your data is up to you. With the best internet speeds, it's amazing what you can do on MTN.
Autistic children dreams come true during Verna Mineral Water rebranding launch.
Most of the times people ignore such kids and they tag them as evil kids or they are cursed and all that, but that's not true.
Putting a smile on every child's face, regardless of their condition, is a major responsibility of our society, and I am pleased to be a part of this today.
In this life, the best thing you can do is to make someone else happy, or basically make people around you happy.
Drinking and buying Verna mineral water, you help many people out there, like our beautiful sisters over here, and all the many people that Verna mineral water helps.
Here we go. Purchase a bottle of the all-new, sleek and stylish Verna natural mineral water today and support a worthy cause. Verna mineral water, changing people's lives.
Precious one, I'm Bishop Charles Ajinasari. 2018 will be my 35 years in a miracle ministry. And in every nation I've been to, the power of God has been present to save, heal, and deliver. I want to specially invite you to our Miracle Festival at the Independence Square from the 30th of January 2018 to the 2nd of February, 5 p.m. each night. Beloved, bring the unsaved, bring the hurting, bring those who have problems, and the power of God will be present to save, heal, and deliver. Jesus is the same yesterday, He's the same today, He's the same forever. And so I'm specially inviting you to this Miracle Festival. Join me, your life will never be the same. Invite your friends, invite those who are sick, bring them, and God will touch them. anyami nke ba nyumbo ke ni ba ta ohe novio miva mauna kasimi. It's the word of God, the miracle. It's the word of God in your
life. 4G is non-stop music. It's sharing and entertainment without buffering. It's gaming with no lag and movies with full immersion. 4G is business without restrictions. It's also smarter money. It's learning beyond borders. Achievement without limits. And health for everyone. It's love, family, joy, and everything else. 4G is life. Get a 4G device today and live on the next level. MTN 4G. Hello, future.
MTN. Everywhere you go.
Sometimes it's gonna hurt. Sometimes you don't feel good as you know you'll feel. But this is what you want, and if you want it, you gotta go hard for it. You don't have to stop. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
I don't find time to run. I make time to run.
You are powerful. Feel like a champion.
You better run with more life until you hit that finish line.
When nothing goes right, go run. It's supposed to be hard. The hard is what makes it great. Run energy drink. Run to greatness.
Once they used to supply the illegal booze to the shebeens, and then when they didn't feel good or they didn't get their cut, they would come and raid the township. And as little children, we used to stand guard for the police, and when they came, we'd take little stones and throw them on top of the corrugated iron roofs, and the whole township would ring like there was a hailstorm, and we would scream, "Kauleza! Kauleza, mama!" And for those of you who don't speak Italian, that means, "Mama, hide the alcohol. Here come the police." Kauleza! Wonderful. Wonderful. Bellissimo. Chunga, 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 yo kauleza. Yo, mama, kauleza. Chunga, 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 yo kauleza. Yo, mama, kauleza. Chunga, 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 yo kauleza. Yo, mama.
Music career be any different if you had stayed in South Africa, considering the oppression that was in South Africa at the time?
I think I would have been killed because I had a mouth. I had plenty mouth too. And I didn't fear authority, you know, so I think I would have been killed. My mother had tears of joy when I was leaving. I mean, she was very sad to see me go, but she was so happy because she always said, "The way you talk to white people, my boy, I'm afraid they're going to kill you," you know.
Anyway, but you still went back to South Africa eventually. Things have changed.
After 30 years, I went back home, yeah.
and things have changed a bit.
Well, there were more people. When I left South Africa, the population was 10 million. When I came back, it was almost 50 million. So that made it a great difference. But the effects of apartheid after 50 years of it really showed. You know, the people, the Africans were poorer and the white people were richer.
Have things changed now?
Well, I don't think that you can change things by
well, have they been able to bridge the gap between the whites and the blacks? Because we occasionally hear how the blacks are still dissatisfied with the system and they will turn on their fellow Africans. And I'm talking about xenophobia in recent times in South Africa.
Well, let me answer your first question first. There's never been a time in history, you know, when people have said, we're so sorry we oppressed you for so long. Here's 300 trillion pounds to show you how sorry we are. It has never happened in the history of humanity, and it wasn't about to go to happen in South Africa. South Africa is the wealthiest country in Africa, but we don't own the land, and like all the economy is owned by white people. And they're not going to like turn around and say, sorry, we oppressed you. You can have my factory, you know, or you can have my money. It doesn't happen that way, and it has never happened. I don't think that. So, if anything, life is tougher now than it was. But what also happened is that when we became free, because it seemed like the greatest country of hope, people came from everywhere. You know, people came from wherever there was oppression, Eastern Europe, the Caribbean, South America, and all over Africa. And they came there with hope. But there's a history of mining in South Africa where Africans were not allowed into South Africa unless they were indentured servants or migrant laborers. That was the law. And they lived separately. And it was men, and they lived in single men's hostels in real squalor. I don't know if you've heard the song, the train song that I do. It talks about that, and so people were always separated from them. They were not allowed. So the first time that foreign Africans came to South Africa and mingled among us was after 1994. And they came with much greater skills and capabilities and a knowledge of business. And xenophobia is one of the worst things that I can say have ever happened to South Africa. But I think it's not unique to Africa alone, because if you go to the Congo, there's problems. If you go to Sudan, there's problems. If you go to Somalia, there's problems.
But the one in South Africa was highlighted the most.
Of course, because it's supposed to be a country of democracy.
Okay. How did you get hooked onto drugs?
I was born in an illegal drinking house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, South Africa, Africans were not allowed to drink until 1961. Liquor was illegal for Africans, but it became one of the greatest industries. And many an educated South African was educated from like their mothers or their grandmothers selling illegal liquor. So she was a shebeen queen. She sold booze, her brother sold booze. And most people didn't want to work for white people, open shebeens. And I hated this. I had to work in my grandmother's shebeen from when I was 3, 4, you know, carrying booze here to go and...
At that age, I mean, 3, 4, holding alcohol.
Oh, yeah. And the miners in the weekend, they drank in the backyard on benches, you know, and sort of stoops that were made from concrete and sand. And then my grandmother's friends drank in the kitchen, a little higher level, and then in the dining room where the teachers and you know, some of them, and they drank brandy and whiskey and gin and what. And I remember as a child, the funniest thing, there was one gentleman, Jack. He was a press and a dry cleaning. And from time to time, they'd call him from the kitchen to the dining room. And he'd come back and he'd have had a double shot of brandy. And he'd come back to his friends and he'd go, we drink the Obroni type. You know? So the psychology was like that. And people who were really good drinkers were hero worshipped, because drinking to a great extent was a form of defiance. Okay. You know, and we always had to beat the police. When the police were coming as kids, we used to throw stones on top of the corrugated iron roofs, and the whole township would resound, and people would be hiding the evidence and all that. There were police raids. But it was also the police who supplied most of the booze.
Oh.
Well, why should they be different from other police? You know? Yeah. So, even today, South Africa is probably the drinkingest country in the world. Mm. We drink more than I think the Russians and the Polish and the Romanians were supposed to be champs. And at Easter and Christmas holidays, year-end holidays, we have like more than 11 to 14,000 people die on the roads from alcohol causes, and many people die from cirrhosis, and people drink all kinds of drink. I mean, there's even like research that says that many babies in South Africa are born drunk because the mother is drunk throughout the pregnancy.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah. So
it wasn't just alcohol for you.
No. I mean, then there was the musicians. Most musicians smoked weed, and I was a restless kid. Yeah, let me try that. But I think I also had an addictive personality, because an addictive personality is the kind of person who says to you, "What is that?" And you say, "It's vongobo."
What's that?
And he says, "What's vongobo?" He says, "You want to try some?" Says, "Yes." And he tries some and he goes, "Damn, this shit is nasty. Do you got more?" That's a typical addict. You know, in other words, when you have an addictive personality, by the time I got to the States, where most of my friends there died from heroin, I was afraid of heroin. I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it made you feel. You know, so to a great extent, I'm lucky that I'm sitting here with you today.
At 77, you don't look a day past 40.
You say that to all the old men, I'm sure.
No. No. I don't at all. I don't say that to them.
No, I'm joking.
All right, let's talk about Miriam Makeba. You've been married 4 times.
Yeah.
You have expertise.
Well, I know people who have been married 8 times. Or 9 times, so I mean.
You've done it 4.
Yeah.
Why didn't it work with Miriam Makeba?
I met Miriam Makeba when I was 16 and she was 23.
You like them old?
No, I think maybe they liked me young. And we just hit it off. By the time she went overseas a year before me, we were not only lovers, but we were dear friends. But we also had like a very open relationship because of our ages.
So beautiful. Oh
yeah. She was a little older than you should have seen her at 23.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. By the time we got married, we both had careers and we hardly saw each other. It didn't work out. My second marriage, I married an young American singer, dancer, actress by the name of Chris Calloway. Her father was a very famous musician, Cab Calloway, a great actor and a very wealthy man. But we married, and she was just like the greatest angel until she tried killing herself. We were married for 3 months, and in that 3 months, I lost about 50 pounds.
Okay, 50 pounds at that time must have been a lot of money.
No, 50 pounds in weight.
In weight? Okay,
yeah.
I thought you took another camera.
It was a very, very busy marriage. We were always going to the hospital because she was always trying to commit suicide. And And it was completely crazy. But you know, when you're in love, you think maybe you can help.
Right.
You know, and then after the second month, after the third month, finally I had to like get
3 months only?
Yeah.
Okay,
the 3 months felt like 30 years.
And then your third marriage?
My third marriage was to a South African woman who had grown up in New York. There she's Jabu. We're still very great friends with her.
Yeah.
And Jabu had come to the States when she was 12. So when I went back home, she wasn't very keen to go back home because she just felt like it's not New York. She was a real New York girl, although she used to come to South Africa every year for vacation. And she just, and I think she was right at the time, you know, because I rushed home and things didn't really turn out the way I thought it would for everybody. For me, it turned out great, but...
Okay, and then your fourth?
My fourth
a Ghanaian.
My fourth was I was married to a Ghanaian woman. But I think that one, the biggest problem was it was at the peak of my life and the peak of my career, and I was hardly ever home. I was always I do about 150 to 200 shows a year, and at first
Is that familiar?
Yeah. But that makes her look a little older than she was. And that's Patrick and Adam. So I married the three of them together and brought them to South Africa. But I was never really home. And after the boys had left, you know, when they'd grown up and they went back to the States, it just fizzled because if you're not together, there's no point being together.
Will you try
so
fifth time?
No, I've given up. It's obvious that I'm not good at it. You know, and I have to admit that I'm not good at it because of
Don't you get lonely?
Don't
you get lonely? Or are you dating somebody you just don't want to marry? But are you seeing somebody?
I didn't ask you if you are dating anybody.
Well, if you ask me, I will tell you the truth.
If I'm lucky.
Okay, we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll talk about the scourge of HIV/AIDS. You lost your sister to AIDS.
Yeah.
And your family had a problem with you for spilling the beans because they had told everybody your sister died from pneumonia.
Yeah.
Right, we'll be back to get into that discussion.
G is non-stop music. It's sharing and entertainment without buffering. It's gaming with no lag and movies with full immersion. 4G is business without restrictions. It's also smarter money. It's learning.
Changing people's lives.
Grab it, find it, pick it, choose it, fill it, pick it, fill it, weigh it. Resist it. Resist it. Resist it. Master Pass it. Speeding past temptation, priceless. Introducing MasterPass QR, a new way to pay from MasterCard. Using your mobile banking app, scan the merchant's QR code. Enter the amount to pay, followed by your PIN. The merchant receives confirmation, and you're done. Ask your bank about MasterPass QR.
The Ghana Trade Fair Company, under the auspices of the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the One District One Factory Secretariat, welcomes you to the 22nd Ghana International Trade Fair under the theme Industrializing Ghana and Creating Jobs. It will be 1 week of exhibition and enterprise from February 28 to March 7, 2018, offering manufacturers, suppliers, consumers, and various service providers the opportunity to network and make sales. The Presidency urges you to support, partner, and explore the opportunities available.
For inquiries, call 0241-818-658, 0244-173-127, 055-247-4632, or visit tradefairgh.com.
The 22nd Ghana International Trade Fair, industrializing Ghana and creating jobs.
I have to add to the noise.
All right, welcome back to the show. Let's talk about HIV and AIDS now. Starting off with your sister.
Yeah.
How long ago was this?
It was about 18 years ago, exactly this year when she passed away. But my sister knew 4 years before that that she was HIV positive. But she was
Which of them?
She was hiding it from us.
That one, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, she was 38, I think, when the...
And she hid it from the family.
Well, it had such a big, in South Africa, AIDS had such a big stigma, and we had the biggest population of AIDS, I think, in the world. But it was so stigmatized that most people who had AIDS were thrown out by the family, you know, into the streets. So many people died because their families disowned it. But we looked after our sisters. We got once we found out, because she got a top job as the chief chef at the Sun City. She could cook. My mouth is watering when I think about it. She could really cook, and she taught me a few dishes, and she was really beautiful. But she was afraid to tell us. So by the time she finally told us it was too late, we put her in a hospice. And a year later, she was gone. And it was only after I spoke about it that most of my family, except for my sister Barbara, most of my family were upset. Why did you tell a person?
Was it because of the shame that would be associated with the family?
Yeah, the stigma. But I think I was one of the first people to confront the family and to say, listen, we have to tell the truth. We can't hide this because other people have it. And I think to a great extent it might have helped people to embrace people with HIV. It's still a major problem, I think we still have that scourge in South Africa. It's no more the stigma. It's just that people, especially young people, are crazy about, what do you call it, skin-on-skin sex. And
they don't want to use the condom.
Yeah, they don't want to. And people have spent, then of course we are also the rape capital of the world, So
we've heard of stories of, old men who have HIV or AIDS, raping little kids.
There was one time there was a belief.
They think it will heal them.
There was a belief at one time that if you rape a baby,
you'd be cured of AIDS.
Yeah, and if you didn't have it, you could never get it again if you slept with a child. I mean, at one time there was a 5-month-old baby was raped, and people just shook their head. I think one of the things that happened in South Africa, I don't know, maybe in many countries, is that we lost our sense of outrage. People started looking for like the comfortable things and to acquire beautiful things and all that. But I mean, like in South Africa, say a woman is raped every 2 minutes. And most of the people who rape are already HIV positive.
Now, I want us to talk about other things, the things you don't like. I've been told that you will not take a picture with a woman with...
And here I am on camera with you for an hour, right?
And I'm still getting a picture with you.
Yeah.
You have to defy that rule.
Right. Okay. No, I don't have to.
What is it about this that you can't stand?
Well, I'm going to give you 3 examples. The first one is that I go all over the world and I've never seen an Indian woman or a Brazilian woman or a Chinese woman wearing African hair.
Okay.
Don't laugh. She doesn't like that. Don't laugh. That's A. B, African women internationally spend almost $100 billion a year on other people's hair. $100 billion a year is something that African society internationally can't afford. And then I have a heritage foundation, and I want to raise funds to bring heritage restorations. So if funders see me...
This is a contradiction.
So if they see me with on Facebook or Twitter, wherever I did, Instagram, and they're going to say, well, Hugh, we thought you were serious about this program, but you're not serious. So they're going to ask me about you, and I say,
Well, she flew me from South Africa to Ghana, and I was on her program.
You had no option.
Yeah, I don't have an option.
Okay, so there's a young man in the audience who's a huge fan of yours. He actually says he has got one of your albums, and he's got a question for you. So, Della, if you're ready to ask Mr. Masekela, no, you can sit and ask him the question, and you can tell him about the album as well.
So, I noticed that musicians of your generation make songs that transcend your generation into other generations, and they look like they would outlive you guys yourselves.
Don't say you guys, I don't accept that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
I have a lot of problems, as you can tell. Yeah.
I know. Okay.
But when you take musicians from my generation, it seems when they make a song that's a hit one season, the next season you can't listen to the song and feel the same way about it. Why do you think it's that way?
Because there are no more songs. There are no more songs. There's just beats, you know. You know.
Can you do the Azonto though?
Azonto. So, and technology has made it possible for anybody. You can just put a sample of your voice, and then you can put in your words, and you can have a hit, Gangnam Style, Gangnam Style, Gangnam Style, you know. But I think it's a passing phase. I think music will come back. What do you think, Kiki?
Yes.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was going to talk about Kiki Banson. He's one of your good friends here in Ghana.
Kiki is my parole officer in Ghana.
Parole officer.
And also probation officer. No, Kiki is a dear friend.
Yeah.
He's a very dear friend. He's actually a younger brother. And he's a nephew of a friend of mine who passed away, Joe Ampa. Was a beautiful soul, and I met him through...
I know Joe Ampa.
Yeah, so I met him through Joe Ampa. Yeah.
Okay, and you do admire some Ghanaian musicians, don't you? You like them?
Many. I mean, CK Man to me is like so many musicians, Ghanaian musicians, great high life musicians came from CK Man. A person like Pat Thomas, who's just like unbelievable, you know. When he sings, I mean, Jesus, you know. And then there's been a whole lot of musicians, Papa Jansen, and there were great bands here like the Ramblers. When I first came to Ghana, there were what they call afternoon jumps, and there would be a band playing at the Ambassador on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and at the Star Hotel, and at a few other hotels.
And they go there to dance in the afternoon.
And there were so many clubs also in town, and all that has disappeared. When disco came, all that went away.
But for the current crop of musicians?
Yeah, I actually helped Kiki with Becca when she started. I said, listen, let me help you with this girl because she's not, she's not doing the right thing for herself. So we worked very hard on her. And I really appreciate very deeply Efia, you know, and Gwabena, he's beautiful. And there's quite a few others, you know. But I'm also...
You don't like rap? Hip life.
We're talking about me. Oh yeah.
Hip life.
Well, that's why I learned schoolboy, come. There was a big hip life hit of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which one yeah. No, I know. In fact, I was turned on to hip life by Joe Ampa. He knew all the songs and all the words, you know, and I loved hip life. Because there was still music. There was still music there. And I think the Nigerians hijacked it, and
they hijack everything, don't they?
Yeah, from Ghana.
Yeah, they hijacked Azonto.
So maybe you should just like join and become one country.
Okay, so there's something on the show called Off the Cuff.
Off the cuff.
Yeah, very silly question that I like to ask. And hopefully you'll be very genuine. You'll be very truthful with your answers. Would you know the number of women you've had sex with?
I don't count. I never counted. Do people count? Do you?
I count.
Do you count? Would you tell us how many men you'd been with?
I'm not here to answer questions.
Even
you're the
off
one
the
answering
cuff?
the question. Yeah, you're the one answering the question.
Okay. But I can ask you.
Yeah.
I always ask everybody who asks me my private business, I ask them theirs.
So you can't, you don't know the number of women then?
No, I mean, boy, I'm 77. I started when I was 13.
You're a legend. I need to borrow those words. Captain, legend, leader. You are a legend. And you are 77. The last time I called you, I said I wanted to meet you in the morning, and you said you had to go through yoga. And I understand you swim 2 hours a day.
Yeah, and I do Tai Chi as well. Yeah.
Is that your secret?
Well, I exercise, I walk. I think everybody should exercise, because if you don't, it catches up with you later. You can tell by the time a person is 50 that they've never exercised. But exercise sustains you. The body was made to move all the time.
Thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
You're a wonderful host.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're a great
and also a very beautiful host, isn't she?
You see, the fact I'm a public figure doesn't mean that I should publicize my figures.
Okay, so you can just have sex with a man without getting emotionally attached?
Yes.
Is that
Could it be that really? What's into no makaza?
I'm from home. And I rap in heaven.
It will not from 5 women in answer your bend because eventually it will bow down to gravity.